Hello, everybody, and welcome to our very, very special course, which we've titled Reality Atlas. And in this video, we're going to discuss Chapter 1. So without further ado, I'm going to call out the title, Scott, which is Part 1, The Marvel of Geometry. Is that correct?
It is. That's the first part of the book. There are 3 parts of the book. And so within that part, we're going to do the first chapter, which is the quick geometric primer.
Aha, I got it. I got it here.
Yeah,
okay.
So
just for our listeners, it's like, I just want to just call, I know you probably watch it in the intro, but just for our listeners to know what we're doing here is we're actually like just speaking aloud about like the core philosophical principles that hold the most heart and meaning for Scott and I, remembering that this book was kind of seeded. It was like a spark that collated everything that Scott had accumulated over his 2.5 decades of exploring sacred geometry, and he birthed this amazing book, So just to kind of make it a bit more fun and digestible, we want to kind of like, just transform this book into almost like a conversational walkthrough, so that you don't just get like an opportunity to read the book, but you can really feel our passion for the whole journey through this book, because this book essentially is kind of like the central DNA of everything that we do in Sacred Geometry Academy, So without further ado, I just wanted to call that out, Scott. But
thank you, Geoff. And the book is really a cohesive philosophy, and it presents an alternative worldview for you to consider. But you kind of have to go through the whole thing, and that's why this Reality Atlas course is going to kind of exists at a meta level above the primary text. So it's just us kind of riffing about what's in the book. Hopefully that will excite you to actually read the book yourself and get the primary information directly. But let me just talk about this first chapter. And it's just an orientation to kind of talk about geometry itself and why are we interested in that, and what aspects does geometry have? Of course, you must remember when you went to school, you must have taken a geometry in your math course at some point. And that would be the mathematical use of geometry. So that's one of the 3 primary uses of geometry in our world. It's the mathematical use, and it's also historically the oldest. It's been around since the earliest history of the earliest records that we have of early civilizations. Math is part of that. It's always been a part of human history. And so that, I think that's fascinating, that all these different cultures around the world understand math to greater or lesser degrees. And that's a very important point, Geoff, that I want to pull out of this, is that math is a very unusual and singular activity because it transcends cultures. And it's probably the only thing, maybe music could do that too, but certainly math transcends cultures. So there's not like an ancient Egyptian math, which is totally different than Sumerian math, because in the end, they're all part of the same interlocking system that we call mathematics, and geometry is kind of the visual part of that, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, I'd love to sort of like probe a little deeper into that, because I definitely am no mathematician personally. Like in school, I was like super weak at maths, actually. I just couldn't work it out from the, whatever logical part of your brain you apply to formulas and equations and algebra. And even, to be honest, geometry in school and trigonometry in school, the way it was presented to me never made sense to me, quite simply, and it was much later in my life when I look at geometric forms in their most basic sense, like a polygon, like a 5-sided shape, a 6-sided shape, almost like child's play. But instantly it became like a doorway for me to go into the language of geometry. And somehow, I don't know why, but whatever part of my brain responds to just the raw quality of shape itself makes sense to me. I just feel it instantly. I kind of go, oh my God, that's cool. And if you draw a 5-point star on that,
Yeah.
and you
Well,
can keep going
I
all
think
the way
what you're
down.
tuning into there is the qualitative aspect of geometry that I want to discuss and get into in a minute. But before we leave math behind, geometry also has this mathematical use. And I think your experience is very common in that a lot of people are turned off by math in their experiences that they had in school. And in my personal history, I'm kind of the opposite. I loved math. I always did really well in math. And I took
you have that type of brain, really, don't you?
Like I was maybe certainly the first and maybe the only student in my school district who took calculus in grade 11, where like normally you do it in grade 12. It's because I took summer school and I got ahead and you know, it was crazy. Like I was just so into it.
I'm not surprised, Scott, with your brain, you know, that you were like, hey, maybe I'll just take extra calculus as a hobby. You know what I mean? I'm sure you're in the minority of your peer group there.
But it makes me sad that you had the experience that you did, because math is such a wonderful, beautiful thing. And I think the problem in our educational system is that it kind of
kills it.
It kills that in you. Like you just hate it now. And it doesn't have to be that way. I don't know what it was in my particular schooling that didn't kill it for me. But I guess I had good teachers, just lucky, I think.
Would you say it's down to your temperament as well a bit, Scott? Like, you know, did you have friends, for example, that went through the same teachers and hated maths? You know, I'm wondering.
I did, and it's funny. I'm remembering my geometry teacher in like grade 9 or 10. And probably maybe it was grade 9. And he was an alcoholic, and his hands shook on the board and he could barely write legibly. And I remember he would turn around in the class and drink from his flask. I mean, this was like, when I grew up, things were different, you know? And he was also the driving teacher. I remember I learned to drive with him, but it was almost like he wasn't there. And so I thought, well, what is this class really about? Like, obviously, it's not making any sense what he's writing on the board. And so I just read the textbook. And so it was just like, it unfolded for me because I just delved into the material.
Wow.
And everybody else in class was just doing something else, and they were not interested at all. And they were, you know. And
you have that logical skill. I mean, I don't know anybody that has such a pronounced ability to comprehend and understand things logically in the way you do. You know, I mean, you and mathematics, like, you're a perfect fit for each other.
Well, that's the thing about the mathematical use of geometry, is it teaches you rationality. And this in the book, there's a bunch of quotes and a bunch of material kind of supporting that notion that that use of geometry unpacks and builds a rational mind. And this was well known. Like Euclid of Alexandria published this book called The Elements, that was the most published book in the West after the Bible for about 2,000 years. I mean, you think about that. It's like
let's pause on that, because that is a big deal. You know, I mean, the Bible obviously is a big deal. We're talking about Western culture, I presume, here. But like the second greatest book, like published the most amount of publications or something, or the most amount of readings.
The most published book in the world after the Bible
is Euclid's Elements.
But it fell out of favor in probably the early 20th century.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it was like,
why?
People got distracted maybe by the invention of radio and television, is my feeling. And like Abraham Lincoln studied Euclid's axioms and theorems, and there's a great quote about him, how he would stay up late at night studying every one of those until he could do them all from memory, because it made him a better orator, a better thinker. And
it builds a rational mind, a logical, rational mind, which is a very wonderful skill to cultivate. Let's be honest.
It is, but
the world could do with a lot of that right now.
I kind of want to make a bunch of courses on that aspect, but it's something that turns people off. So I haven't done it yet, but I feel like I'm probably a person who could make that exciting.
Wait, do you know what I love about your approach, Scott, is, because I used to be so into the sort of experience of geometry. I mean, I still am, I suppose, but, and I kind of get this instant hit from the qualitative side of it. But what I like about your approach is that you don't dismiss the left brain qualitative mathematical logical approach. That you've shown me that there's a huge amount of gold actually to be uncovered in that side of the fence too. So it's not like qualitative good, quantitative bad, and
No.
I was a little bit like that, to be honest, up until we had our kind of like amazing journey together. You sort of changed me actually in that way. And I'd like to learn more actually of the sort of the more Euclidean geometry, which is a foreign language to me right now,
I mean, it can actually be this experience. What I equate it to is kind of interacting with profound truth. Like there's no other discipline that we study that has that level of truth to it. Everything else seems to be culturally relative. But mathematics, because it is a universal, transcending all cultures, it's like profoundly, amazingly true. And in that truth, there's an exquisite beauty. And I think that's what attracts mathematicians, like professional mathematicians do that field, because it's a beautiful thing. And they love it. But that's only one use of geometry. Okay, so let's just put that to the side for a minute and talk about the other two uses. All right.
The
second use is called the quantitative use. And this is by far the most popular use of geometry in the world. And that would be using geometry to do practical things, like make blueprints for your house, make a 3D model of the next iPhone, make a map of the world, and all the geometry that's involved in the mathematics behind the vector map is all geometry, isn't it? But all of that
design as well, advertising, credit cards, even, I don't know, windows for houses, or all the architecture stuff. That's a huge use
all the
of
software
practical
that we
geometry.
use is all built on the kind of quantitative aspect of geometry. And so like in my career, I've spent, literally decades teaching people how to use AutoCAD, and it's a quantitative aspect of geometry. And so it's about doing practical things in the world, and using, and like pretty much all kinds of design require geometry. You can't really get much done unless you have, imagine if we didn't have geometry and you're like, how do I show you what kind of house I want to have? Or how would I make anything without geometry? So that's the main use of geometry in the world, is that quantitative use, that where we're measuring, we're dimensioning, we're getting numerical data out of it.
Could I ask, Scott, things like I know trigonometry is used a lot for like locating things in space, it's one of the main things. And so I wonder, does Google, I guess something like Google Maps is based on trigonometry, is it?
Well,
to sort
trigonometry would be, a mathematical use of geometry, and
the
developers of certain mapping software they must use trigonometry kind of in making the tools. But once you have those tools, then you can run a lot of quantitative aspects of geometry through those tools, and in terms of the practical particulars of a map. So they use that mathematical understanding behind the scenes, but it's primarily about the practicalities of it now.
I get you. So trigonometry would be purely mathematical in using your model,
Well, trigonometry is really the relationships, all the relationships of a unit circle, a circle with a radius of 1. I don't know if you knew that, but that's what trigonometry is.
I thought it was to do with triangles, actually. I thought it was all about, you do the triangulation to locate a thing that kind of...
Well, if you draw a triangle, okay.
And
the let's say the upper right corner is on the circle and the lower right corner is on the center of the circle, then the width of the triangle would be the cosine of x, and the height of the triangle would be the sine of x. So that's kind of it. I mean, there's a whole like trip I could go into about trigonometry and where that comes from, but it's really the relationships to a circle that a line has to a circle. And remember that it kind of is a little bit like squaring the circle. It's bringing up some of those archetypes that we've gotten into in our squaring the circle course.
You bet.
But the last in the use of geometry that we focus on here at Sacred Geometry Academy, of course, is the qualitative.
Okay, bring it, Scott. This is like the pearl beyond price, I would say. Now be careful, everybody. Well, I suppose more like full disclosure alert. I'm a bit biased because this is the one that speaks to my heart directly. And to be honest, before I met you, Scott, I thought it was the only geometry, actually. But please fire away. Would it be nice? Could I ask you to read? Maybe it's not right. I don't want to get you to do it if it's not right. But the Keith Critchlow quote at the very start of the chapter.
Sure.
It's just such a quality quote.
Yeah. So he said, geometry can be considered from at least 3 viewpoints. First, as a technical exercise, mostly serving industrialization. Secondly, as a purely mathematical function. Thirdly, and most importantly, as a science of the soul. This has to be performed with the human hand and is fundamental to a deeper understanding of the Platonic wisdom tradition. Geometry is only fully understood by doing it. And so
I love that.
I totally agree with that. And what he's saying is, in the first technical exercise that serves industrialization would be the quantitative aspect of geometry. The second is the purely mathematical function, which we've discussed. And thirdly, the science of the soul is the qualitative aspect of geometry. And that is, what does that mean, the qualitative? It means the qualities of, and what are the qualities? Those are things that we only know in consciousness. So you have to ask a conscious being, what is it like? How does it feel? What is a triangle like as opposed to a circle? And only you, the conscious being, knows what that's like. An algorithm doesn't know that. It just has data.
I just, because this is my home base with geometry, so I could talk all day about this one, but like in my own journey with geometry, like I sometimes would be explaining to my friends or a talk or something, I'd say things like, geometry is imbued with a pattern of order that has a deep intelligence that can impart wisdom to us, and I'm getting all excited and impassioned and ranting like this, and then my friends will say like, what are you talking about, Geoff? Like what, like, and you mean like a circle, you mean like a square? And I'm showing like elaborate kind of like, crop circle geometries, and they're these exquisite compositions of a combination of all these different layers of relationships of geometric forms. And it's almost like a composition that just speaks to me, and but then what I love about what you and I have done together, Scott, is we're trying to bring that home, aren't we? We're trying to land, like, what do we mean when we say there's a code, a pattern of order that can impart an intelligence or a certain sort of wisdom? And then even something as simple as a circle is imbued with information, isn't it? Like, is that fair to say? A square is imbued with information. Like, I sometimes do an exercise on the screen where I throw up a circle and say, how does that feel? And then I throw up a square. How does that feel? Does it feel any different? And I snap between the circle and the square. So don't think about it. Don't be like, oh, just feel the difference.
So I think,
and nearly everyone goes, wow.
So where you're coming from there, if I can characterize that, would be you're appealing to the whole person, or you could make a case that that's more like right-brained. It's more like seeing the whole rather than like synthesizing the whole rather than analyzing the little pieces. So the mathematical use of geometry would be like analyzing the pieces, and it becomes a left-brained focused affair. Whereas appreciating the whole composition is a right-brained kind of qualitative aspect where you're getting, what's your take on that? How do you feel about that? You see? And this whole side of geometry has been overlooked for centuries because we from the beginning of civilization, we knew about the mathematical use. And then because of practical considerations, we know about the quantitative use because we need to make stuff. right? But the people that are all into the feeling of geometry have been kind of like trivialized, like, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, let's get on with the day.
Yeah.
Come on, we got to get on with building stuff, you know?
Yeah, we've got a toilet to unblock here, Geoff. You know, we haven't time for your crop circle talk.
Yeah. So it's kind of a luxury item to be able to have the time and space to go into sacred geometry, to go in the qualities of geometry.
Yeah.
And we call it sacred because of how it makes us feel. It's so exquisite and beautiful and honestly sacred. Like, but it's not like oh, it falls in a certain Buddhist tradition or what. It doesn't really. It's not bringing in the traditional aspects from the world's great religions, but because it's something that is directly accessible to your experience.
Yeah, and just not to get off topic here, but what I love about this use of geometry is that actually, if you flip that on its head, that it's like geometry doesn't belong to any of the traditions, you know, yet all of the traditions have been I think the greatest champions of the best attributes of geometry. So the beautiful tapestry behind you is an Islamic piece, you know, exquisite geometry, you know,
it's not ethnic or cultural or belonging to a specific society. It's transcendent. And so you see it in every religion. Yeah. And that's like, if you go into a magnificent Gothic cathedral and you're just blown away by the geometry and the feeling in the space, you're like, I could see signing up for this religion. This is awesome. You know? But then if you go into like a Baha'i temple and you're like blown away by the 9-sided geometry and all the beauty of that, you're like, I could sign up for this. This is so awesome.
I know.
So I know. I think in a way, these religions are just tapping into the deeper
the truth and the beauty
of the truth and beauty. And of course you'd want to do that. What are you going to, because you're going to have
we resonate with those things. Because we're made of those things.
Exactly. You're going to want that in you know, in your tradition, because it's the best.
Oh, I know this is just chapter 1, Scott. I'm loving talking about it, but is it fair to say, just to give people the context? I mean, I hope I'm not off track with this, but I mean, the entire core essence of what we're doing with Sacred Geometry Academy is essentially a bringing and a celebrating of this qualitative component of geometry, and not negating the other attributes. You know, they have their place and they're beautiful in their own right, but we're just probably, I hope I'm not domineering too much, you know, because you could do a course on any of the other ones, you know, but I'm definitely at home in this experiencing of sacred geometry.
Well, that's where the most the power for personal transformation is domain in the qualitative aspects of geometry. And so that's our focus here. But I think in the future, I may want to make courses on the other aspects of geometry, because I'm a lover of geometry in all of its aspects.
I know
totally. That's not for everyone, but I think that if you get into the qualitative aspect, I might be able to convince you to learn the mathematical aspect, because it's so wonderful too, in a different way.
I love that, Scott. Yeah, and I totally encourage you to do that. But in that case, you'd have to join the People's Front of Judea. You wouldn't be able to do that through the Judeans People's Front. No, I'm only joking. No, I actually compliment you sincerely on your way to hold the magic of all the different spokes on the wheel, actually, of geometry, you know. And you've definitely changed my mind towards the mathematical and the quantitative. You know, they're not, because I sort of dismissed those, because I sort of felt dismissed because I was so into the felt experience, and that, you know, I sometimes, mathematicians would be maybe they may dismiss me, actually, you know. But now you've sort of brought me around to say, hey, hang on a minute, like, it's really all the same thing. It's actually just looking at the same thing through a different lens, essentially, isn't it?
And with a different aspect of your total, like, cognitive ability. So it's a focused area rather than a more expansive, holistic area. But we have that capacity as human beings. And so I think that we ought to embrace it all. The most amazing part would definitely be what we're doing here, the qualitative aspect of geometry.
Yes.
And that's what this book is all about, in fact,
I was
is
just going to say that.
into that aspect of geometry,
exactly,
and unpacking why it is. Like, this whole book was my effort to explain why geometry can be sacred.
Mhm.
How is it that you can have that experience of it being sacred? And I think it's probably been overlooked. Like, you know it's sacred, Geoff. You've always enjoyed that aspect, but maybe you weren't drawn to that question of like, why am I having such a good time with this? Because like you're just happy to have a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm kind of like, my left brain is kind of bothered, like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why would this be so transformative? Like, it's just a bunch of triangles and circles and stuff, like, and so the kind of focused aspect of the mind can't comprehend it, because geometry, sacred geometry, is a pathway to actually transcend the mind. And so the mind can't get it. It doesn't get it.
Yeah. It doesn't get it. I totally get it. And so Scott, this is the end of chapter 1, but I suppose what we could say is, like, you've sort of set out a kind of a departure point from here for the rest of the book, you gave a lovely kind of, I suppose, just an honoring to, look, I know about quantitative, I know about mathematical, but from here on in, this book is going to take us on a wonderful journey into the qualitative. And that's essentially what this initial chapter is about. Isn't that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We'll see you in the next video when we're talking about the unpacking the sacredness within geometry.
Fantastic. See you in chapter 2, guys. Thank you.